Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm Vinny Costa, editor of Street Muscle Magazine, and your host of the RodCAST, the all-encompassing car show where we talk about all things automotive. Today, I'm joined by my co-host, Greg Acosta, editor of Engine Labs and all-around tech guru.
Hey,
what
Vinny.
up?
How are you today?
I'm good, man. I'm really good. We're recording this episode on a Monday, so starting the week off right, knocking this out. We have a really, really special guest, which I think is very fitting since this is our 20th episode, man. I can't believe it.
Well, the 20th episode happens to also fall on the day before 4th of July. So July 3rd.
Yeah, that's awesome, man.
I mean, you know what else? You know what other national holiday happens on July 3rd, right?
What's that?
My birthday.
Oh, really?
Yep. July 3rd.
Well, happy birthday, dude.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, that's cool, man. You're almost like a Tom Cruise.
Born on the 4th of July, yeah. I grew up thinking that fireworks were for me. Seriously. Like, I think I was probably about 9 years old before I realized that it wasn't, for everybody. Of course, I wonder if that says more about me or about my parents. Like, I don't know who's to blame there, but...
Well, like I said, man, we got a really special guest. Someone I've been a fan of for a very long time. And like I said, I think it's fitting that they come out on our 20th episode. Savvy fans of our show will probably already know who I'm talking about just by the change of poster behind me. But this guy and his team, they've crafted some of the most jaw-dropping, multiple award-winning builds, and I'm continually impressed with what they're putting out. Of course, I am talking about the venerable Kyle Tucker of Detroit Speed. So let's go ahead and bring him on. Hey, Kyle. Thank you so much for coming on, taking some time out of your busy schedule, man.
Oh, you're welcome. It's my pleasure to be on and bench race and do some car talk with you guys today. So thanks for having me on.
Definitely, man. Definitely. Your story is an interesting one. And like I said, we really appreciate you being here. So listen, I want to jump right into it because there's a lot I want to cover. You're an interesting guy with an interesting story. So I guess let's start with all the normal stuff that led to you starting Detroit Speed. Like, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, when I, like so many of us, I guess you're just born with mechanical aptitude or mindset anyway, and mine was a mindset. I grew up on a farm in a small town in southeast Missouri. So I always tell people I learned how to break things first, so then you had to learn how to fix them, right? So growing up on a farm, I learned how to work hard and, worked all the time. I mean, it's just what we did. And again, I had to help out on the farm. And like you said, as you do that day to day, you learn how to fix things, work on things all the time. So that led to, my dad was a hot rodder gearhead, right? So I come by it honestly, like many of us do. And I got into go-karts, work all day, and then Dad would take me to the track, but I always had to pay for my way, as far as the carts and the engines and everything. So it was of course, dirt tracks were big in the Midwest, and that's what I did. He took me to our local Saturday night dirt track, and I was hooked. I smelled the hot gear oil and saw the alcohol flames coming out of the headers, and I was hooked. So I wanted to race. I loved racing, and so that started me in kart racing. And did that until I was about 15. And I was building my own engines, doing all the maintenance, all the prep, all the setup. And Dad would take me to the track. And that got to be almost cost prohibitive because I was running in a engine class that, it was 4 fuel pumps on an engine, running alcohol and nitro. And it was getting very expensive for my part-time farmer budget. So it was neat because I kind of got a break in our area. Ken Schrader grew up in the area where I grew up, and he drove sprint cars and dirt champ cars for Ray Marler, who was in my hometown. So I used to go by there if I had my homework caught up. My mom would drop me off at Ray's shop, and I could sweep the floors and just take it in. And as Schrader came down to NASCAR land, Rayburn started to get a little bored and basically bought a limited late model sportsman car, and he taught me how to race at that local Saturday night track. So I maintained the car, built the car, and he would show up and help me race on Saturday night. So that's kind of how it all got started.
That's awesome, man. I'm always interested to know what would lead a person to this life of craftsmanship. And what I mean by that is like the level of detail in your work and the attention to every minute feature on a car. It's really impressive. As you kind of walked us through your early interests, what influences led you to develop that unique skill set of attention to detail?
Yeah, and it is. I mean, today's cars and trucks that people are building, everybody's building it, home shops to pro shops. It's immaculate detail and the vision that people have, and I attribute that to, again, me being a racer, and you have to do things right. You have to do it right the first time. You only get one chance to go on the track and to make it right. And I think you blend that with like my dad's level of detail by building hot rods and street rods, as a hobby. You blend both of those together, and that's kind of was what made me up. Roger Penske and Mark Donahue were big influences of me
Yeah,
for the Camaros. Obviously, that's why I started liking the Trans Am road race Penske Donahue cars, and that's really kind of how it all molded together. From I wanted a muscle car, I wanted it street rod quality, and I wanted it to the point where it was all performance. It could look the part, but it could back it up too with performance, and that's kind of what I guess melded me into our style that we still build today. That it has to work, it has to be functional, and it has to be very, very detailed.
well, Kyle, I do want to get into the inception of Detroit Speed, but I don't want to gloss over this very important like skill set development time in your life. How, because I know that you studied engineering when you were a little bit older in college, but what about during that time, all before that? Were you just racing? Were you kind of had you already started building like hot rods, or was it all racing?
No, it was all racing. In fact, go back to Ray Marley, who I drove for in high school. I started driving for him when I was 15, and it was great. He had sponsors and a great hookup. He was a great racer and chief mechanic, and taught me how to race. And I was on that path. I wanted to be a race car driver. I loved racing. So as I got into that, and I drove for Ray, and we had 2 really good years while I was in high school. I moved up from that to some dirt midgets and sprint cars, open wheel cars like that. And
Very
as you mix a young kid with no fear and into some pretty fast cars, I tore up a lot of race cars. And as I tore up a lot of race cars, it never really shunned me from the idea of wanting to be a racer still. I still had more where that came from. I wanted to put them back together and go race. So I remember one night, I'll make this a long story, a short one, but Rayburn and I'd crashed on a big half-mile dirt track in Illinois one night and in an open wheel car. And I remember walking back to the pits with him, steering wheel in one hand, because that was about all that was left of the car, and my helmet was still in my right hand, taking it off in shock, I think. And he told me, he said, "Kyle, you may need a backup plan to this racing thing." And
oh,
Rayburn was an engineer, and that hit me pretty hard. So I'm thinking, he's probably right. Just in case this doesn't work out, I'm going to go get my engineering degree, because that helps me understand cars, vehicle dynamics, and maybe helps me set them up a little better. So that was my path. I continued to race as much as I could in balanced engineering school. And I was lucky enough that our school, University of Missouri Raleigh, where I went, the engineering school, we had a program with General Motors in Detroit where they accepted college co-ops. So I was accepted pretty early on and worked a semester at GM in Detroit, and then came back to school for a semester and back and forth till I finished engineering school. And of course, as I got into that groove, I had less and less time to race and keep up with school and do everything I could. So I kind of drifted apart. As I graduated and went to GM full time at the Proving Ground in Milford, Michigan, I kind of picked up on more road racing and autocrossing, because that's what we did with the Corvettes at work, and less dirt tracks, because there just wasn't that many in the Detroit area.
man, that's awesome. What a fantastic opportunity. When's the last time you were in a dirt car?
Probably a year and a half ago. I've got friends here in Carolinas. There's several dirt tracks down here. And I got in a sprint car, a 410 car, to do some testing and relive that. And if I was just about 5 or 10 years younger, I'd probably be back in one of those all the time. But
Yeah, as fearless as ever.
I keep telling myself I need to be at the shop on Monday morning and not laid up in a hospital too. So.
Yeah, it's tough to remind yourself of that as we get older.
Right.
I have to be like that every time I climb on my Harley. But
Right.
You're studying engineering, and so you're working with GM again? What a fantastic opportunity! What skill sets did you develop while you were there that translated into the whole Detroit Speed thing?
Yeah, there was, again, another step and another way it kind of molded everything together that became Detroit Speed was at the Proving Ground. I was a test engineer and luckily hired in. I'll date myself a little bit, but it was the early pre-prototype phases of the C5 Corvette, and I worked on the C5 Corvette pretty much my entire GM career. So I was doing suspension and suspension testing and data acquisition for the Corvette C5 program. So it really gave me an insight into what GM does to try and wreck and improve upon the development of a chassis and suspension system like a C5 Corvette. So that was my day-to-day job, was try and break a pre-prototype Corvette every single day. So I was able to do the driving, do the data acquisition, do the analysis, and then of course had to present that to the chief engineer and to my managers at the proving ground too. So it taught me a lot about having to move fast, having to develop the car from the suspension loads that were early on in the platform to a car that what the C5 is today. Of course, not me, but a team full of people. And it was a great team of people that we worked with, from test drivers to engineers to everybody. I mean, it really gave me an insight of how good and what GM does to develop a product line like that.
Yeah, man, I mean, I can only assume you're a young guy at the time. You're really sharp. You're an engineer, and you're working on the pinnacle of American automotive engineering. That's got to be an exciting time for you. I'm really curious. I mean, it takes some gumption to say, I want to strike out on my own after doing something like that. What was the impetus for creating Detroit Speed?
Yeah, when I graduated and went to work at GM, I was kind of getting settled in and thinking this is my 30-year plan. Work for GM, work for Corvette, the performance platform. I was getting to drive at some tracks, getting to autocross some with the Corvettes, and anyway, I thought this is my deal. And development at GM took a little bit of a turn from somewhat of the seat of the pants engineering, like we were doing, data acquisition. You would go back to the garage, rebuild the car, rebuild the shocks, springs, whatever it was, and go back to the track and test again. And no secret, there were foreign competitors beating us to market with a car, shortening the development time. And as we needed to shorten our development time, it became more and more analysis, more and more of driving the car in the computer, sitting in a dark room as an engineer and looking at tons of data. And I'm a doer. I respect and like the computer side of it too, but I like to work with my hands. I like to do things. And as I got into that, and I did some stints in the noise and vibration lab where I learned even more about, noise and vibe and frequencies and what sets the car off from a structure standpoint. It was all very good learning to put in my toolbox as an engineer, of mindset. And anyway, as I did that more and more, I started thinking, and I don't know if I want to do this forever, sit in a computer lab and crunch data. So on the side, we were building the 69 Camaro that became the Twister Camaro just in the garage at home. And the idea was to build a Trans Am road race car of today and super high-end detail of much as, that could be afforded on an engineer salary. So built that car in the garage, and it was just kind of the right place at the right time for a car like that. Saved up vacation and took it on the 2000 Hot Rod Power Tour and drove it coast to coast. And by the end of the tour, it was in magazines and met a lot of people, and it was just the right time for a car like that. And that's literally how the business became, was people wanted either parts like that or a car built like that. And if I couldn't find parts to build the suspension like I wanted on that car, I just did it. Had a Bridgeport and a TIG welder in a 2-car garage and just did it. And it was just the right place at the right time.
Well, that's awesome, man. You touched on a few things that I wanted to address. It seems like when you first started, it was almost like you were kind of living that race car driver dream, right? You're going out on the track, you were testing this, prototype Corvette, and then you would, do your data acquisition, make the changes, and go back out and test it some more. I mean, it sounds like it doesn't get any better than that. But like you, I would die if I had to sit, in a dark room all day, which led you to create something really cool, which is near and dear to my heart, because I love, those guys that you're mentioning, Donahue, Sweet Savage, George Fulmer, all those guys. I love Trans Am racing and that era of motorsports. So then you were at the very, beginning of this pro touring movement. Did you know that that's where it was leading, or could you see it down the road? Could you see, oh, this is a trend that's going to take off?
It was, No, I couldn't see it. I mean, that was just the type of car that I wanted and had my interest, and I guess a lot of other people too. I mean, the Pro Street thing had been around for a long time, and Scott Sullivan were the guys we looked up to, and all the guys that were building really cool cars at that time in the early to mid '90s, late '90s even. And I guess it was just time for a change. And Mark Stilo and I went to engineering school together and worked at GM together. So I mean, we had a lot of bad habits together too. Talking about Camaros, working in the garage, and it was just kind of our mindset. And there was an article that came out that Jeff Smith, the editor at the time of Chevy High Performance,
Mhm.
kind of pinned, the rendering of the Twister that I was building and Mark Stilo's car, and it got a lot of interest, and they kind of pinned it then Pro Touring, and I just thought, hey, that's kind of cool. They noticed the different trend and the big fat tire cars and the blowers sticking through the hood and things like that. There's people want a more versatile car that you can take to the track or take on a weekend and do what you want. And that's what we were building.
Well, and I love Pro Street cars. I love, day two cars. I love them all. They're all very cool. But like you said, there is nothing as well rounded as a finely crafted Pro Touring car. Do you think that's really why it took off so well? Is because people were beginning to realize that, hey, these cars can do more than go in a straight line, and I'm tired of getting beat in these corners by a New Edge Mustang or something.
Right. No, I definitely think so. You think about in the mid '90s, tires were better, cars and trucks were starting to handle better, starting to ride better, and people still like, whether you were a Chevelle or a Mustang or a Chevy 2 or a Camaro person, people forget how bad those cars stopped, took off, drove. I mean, went around corners, all that together. A pickup truck in the mid '90s could almost outhandle a '69 Camaro, right? So I think people, the OEs, the technology that was coming out, the tires at the time, it was all just the right time for a pro touring car. People could appreciate a car you jump in and drive across the country, go to road race tracks if you want, autocrosses if you want. It was literally a car you could do it all in, and that was unheard of for an early muscle car at that time.
So tell me about Twister. What did you adapt from modern automotive engineering and put into that car? And was that something that you planned from the beginning, like with plans and architecture, or is it something that you fine-tuned and tweaked along the way?
I think it was like most people's projects. You start with the best plan you have, and you quickly run out of money. And a lot of those parts came about from swap meets. I bought a pair of Brembo brakes, front calipers off of a Viper at a swap meet in Detroit. Picked up a Viper 6-speed that we converted to a GM input shaft so we could put it behind a small block Chevy. Fuel injection was definitely early on, in the mid 90s, aftermarket fuel injection. So just piece by piece, it really came together, and it was. It ended up being bare brakes on the car, Alcon bare brakes, the Viper 6-speed, mini tubs that basically just took the tubs out of the car, a buddy and I, and we cut them, split them, widened them, put them back in the car, and that became the first mini tub. And still basically use that same pattern today, as long with the body mounts, the subframe connectors. A lot of those parts that were on Twister, we still make and sell today, just like that. But it was really just little by little picking up a part, and it took several years to build that car. Finished it in 2000, 2 or 3 years to finish it. So whatever parts we could come up with during that time and make it work and make it as OE and late model performance as we could. That's what I did.
What about the back half of that car? Was it a Link, or was it still on?
It was a pair of Landrum leaf springs. Landrum at the time had a pair of dirt track springs that you could put under a first gen or second gen Camaro that had the upper, higher spring rate, and that's what was under that car. Still is to this day.
Very cool. Is the car like still in your showroom or your shop or at home?
No, the car was sold after SEMA in 2000. A collector who became a good friend of mine and a good customer bought the car in the end of 2000 after SEMA and still has it to this day in his collection. And so it's lived a better life than I have in the last 20 years, probably, in his collection.
That's awesome, man. Well, it's not like you have any shortage of badass cars laying around. I'm sure, you have a shop full of them right now. And I suppose that leads us to our next talking point, which is expanding on exactly how Detroit Speed got its start. I know it's really over those 20 years, it's grown into this powerhouse in the automotive aftermarket. Can you touch on how you think that's played out?
Yeah, it really started so small. It was my wife at the time and me, that were in the business all the time. I was working out of a 2-car garage, sold Twister, built a bigger shop in the backyard, and worked there. I hired my first part-time guy who ended up being my first employee, who's still with me today. We started building cars in the backyard basically because that was cash flow. I wanted the parts business because I had plenty of ideas for suspension parts, to update these older muscle cars, but I didn't have any money to really go do that in production or equipment to do it. So we built cars through the day. I designed and built parts at night or on the weekends, and you'd build 5 or 6 parts, and sell those, make a little more money, and maybe you'd build 10 parts the next time. So that's how it got started, the parts business and the car business together. It's hard to do that, but that's the way, and we still do it today. But it's because of the cash flow early on, building cars. Not a lot of cars, 1 or 2 at a time. Get those finished, bring in some more, and it slowly grew into 4 or 5 guys. That we had a small commercial building in Detroit area. Outgrew it, and I needed to move the business. I knew that the space was just limiting us at the time for car builds and production parts. To build more parts. And the collector that I mentioned that bought Twister is in North Carolina, and he was really the key to get us to move to North Carolina. So 4 of the employees moved everybody down here, bought a shop in the Mooresville area, which had a fab shop, it had a body shop, it was everything we needed and more. I didn't know how we were ever going to pay the bills on a mortgage to buy that shop, and it seemed so big at the time. And anyway, that's where we moved into and got to work building more cars and more parts.
That's fantastic, man. And I know that you guys are building cars, and at the level that you're building them, obviously it's not going to be a fast process with that attention to detail. But when you're crafting parts and you have an assembly line, so to speak, I'm curious, did you learn anything from your time at GM that carried over? I know that you said that they started getting kind of beat out by some overseas manufacturers. I know Toyota has a very specific business model that for their production, which we're starting to see more and more in domestic operations. Is that something that you employ for your practices now when you're making parts?
I am being an engineer, and our engineering team that we have designing parts. Now it's, we have new product design guys. We have current product, engineering that has to keep up with current products. We have designers. We have different things. And a lot of that comes from and appreciating and what I learned at GM from the degree of engineering that goes into a part to make it as robust, as durable, and as affordable as possible too. I mean, on our product lines, we're known that we're not the least expensive brand, but I think if people understand what goes in from an engineering standpoint, the development standpoint, the fit and finish and the packaging, the whole customer service side, that's good value. And you get what you pay for. And that definitely came from GM to know what went into the design side, what went into the development side to make a part last miles and miles and years later.
Well, I think it's safe to say that that's probably a big reason that you can, or a big factor to attribute the success that Detroit Speed has had, because the reputation for having a fantastic product is there. I guess my next question would be, on the other side of the house, that's the parts production. But what's the Detroit Speed process like for building cars?
Yeah.
Where do you start? Where do you finish? And what are those steps in between?
Yeah, and it really is. It's all in the same brand, but it's really 2 businesses. They are in 2 different buildings. We have the project shop, car build shop, is separate from the fabrication shop that builds the parts, that machines the parts, things like that. There's some crossover in departments, back and forth. But the car build side starts with one. I guess the cars we've been lucky enough to build has brought us clientels and customers that just want a Detroit Speed style car. All the builders, everybody in the home garage to pro builders have their vision and style of what they want to build. Troy Trepanier has his style. Roadster Shop to Goolsby's to Roy Brizio. I mean, on and on and on. I won't leave anybody out. There's so many talented people, but everybody kind of has a look and a build theme, right? And I think that's important. And we at Detroit Speed have a theme that, the car's got to be, one, highly detailed, but it has to have their performance. And to me, it's got to sit right, and it's got to have the right wheel and tire, and it's got to have all the performance, not just engine, but chassis, brakes, the whole thing. So that's been our MO, and it's brought customers to us to just say, hey, look, I want a black 70 Chevelle SS, but I want it built Detroit Speed style. And it's nice because we get to fill in the gaps. And when I say we, it's really myself and the guys in the shop, the project floor. We've got a talented team that's been with me a long time that everybody gets to put in their input. So today, we talk to a customer up front, make sure it's a good fit for both of us, scheduling and the build type and what we want to do, hopefully build the dream car for the customer. And then we get started on a rendering and kind of a parts list. And by then, either if they have a car, we'll get it. If not, we'll go source a car, bring it in, and we get started. And, it runs through the fab shop, and it really is a truly mocked up complete car short of wiring in our fabrication shop. So hard plumbing is done, exhaust is done, all the sheet metal modifications or carbon fiber or whatever we're doing, everything's mocked up to the point you put wiring in it and you could go drive it. And sometimes we have done that, but typically we'll get it to that point, and then it goes over to our body shop, do the body and paint work, and then of course assembly. We do everything in-house except for interior. We sub the interiors out, but otherwise we've got a proven plan that just it works. The guys on the floor, as the car evolves, their ideas come into it with mine and the customers, and we've got a pretty good recipe that we stay in touch with the customer. A lot of times they're not local to us at all. So we have means to stay in touch with them through photographs, and of course it's easy to communicate in the smaller world today with communication that we have. So it's made car building easier in a lot of ways.
I bet. I'm curious. So when you're around that round table, so to speak, and you're with your crew and you're talking to your guys and you're talking to the customer, how much of the unique design that Detroit Speed creates is you and the customer, or how much does the customer bring and say, I really want to use a lot of carbon, or is that all you and your guys?
It varies. Every customer is a little different, but I can tell you every customer has their spot where they want to tell you, hey, this is very important to me. We just have one that we built a big black 6-speed Camaro for, and his was all about the tuning, right? What did you time it at? What's the timing set at? What springs do you have in the distributor? He was very into that detail, but the rest of it he left up to us. Some people want to say, hey, this is the color I want carbon here or there, and the rest of it you guys just do. So I would say very little of it is to the customer, maybe 20%, 25% tops most of the time. And the rest of it is myself and our build team, coming up with the ideas and filling in the gaps. And that doesn't mean that it's an open checkbook build. We have a budget to adhere to, but we want to make the most for that, that customer out of what we have to work with. And a lot of those ideas, we can, we know the parts that we use that work. We know the vendors that we don't use for certain reasons, but we've got a recipe that works, and we try and repeat that as we can, but make each car unique to the customer and what their dream needs to be.
Well, I really think that that's a freedom that you've been afforded just by building on your reputation. If it sounds like a customer who comes to you, they know, I want a Detroit Speed car, like you mentioned. And so, hey, do your thing, Kyle. This is what I want, kind of, but I know you're going to turn out something great, and I think that probably all your customers feel that way. I know I would. I'm curious though. These cars, they always come out so immaculate and perfect, and they're all different. But like you said, you can tell a Detroit Speed car. You can tell a Goolsby car. I'm curious what you would say to someone like a SEMA Young Guns competitor, right? How do you differentiate yourself? How do you create that style that is uniquely yours? Obviously, you've been in this for more than 20 years. Suffering some tribulations along the way, I'm sure. Obviously, some amazing victories. What advice would you give to someone like that? How do they differentiate themselves?
That's a good point. I was fortunate enough to work with SEMA just yesterday on a virtual car show where we were judging some of the young guns cars that they had ready to try and get a chance to come to SEMA. And it was really neat for me to spend a Sunday afternoon talking to 5 or 6 young builders, all under 25, what they built, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, and what type of car or truck they're building. And to any of them, and we talked about it yesterday, was to be able to just, stick to what's important to you. Don't try and build, to what your hero may build. I always tell, everybody to pick your vision and stick with it. And it's really important, even to me to this day, I pay attention to what the other guys are doing. And Bobby Alloway's always been a hero of mine. And he builds a black car with the right wheel and stance, tire combination on it, and it works every time, right? And but you've got to pick your style and stick to it. So I always tell people that if you can't, especially the young builders, they don't have the budget to build everything that maybe the pro builders get to build with a customer that's a little more seasoned. So it's important to just sweat the details. And what I mean by that is all the details do not cost a lot of money. Every builder has a stickler for what they pay attention to. To me, it's like brake lines. Brake lines are brake lines, but brake lines can be done if you take the time, spend the right amount of time on it, and put some design thoughts into it. You can make nice brake lines that just your labor, right? So the young people, guys and gals, just need to count on pay attention to the detail, not in worrying about all the latest and greatest parts, but to pay attention to the details from brake lines to fuel lines to wiring. That's things that if you just care, have the patience and sense of detail, you can get it right. And everybody notices that. And at least the big builders notice if you get that part right. I do for sure. And stick to the theme, make sure that it's the theme that you stick to. Too many builders try and put 5 or 6 ideas into a car that should be 5 or 6 ideas worth of cars, not just one car. So
Right.
don't overdo it. To me, I've always been a clean, simple, understated type of build. But the more you look at the car, the more you find in the details, and to me, that's our style.
Yeah. I'm the same way. There's a place for being ostentatious, and I like those cars. Like especially, like show cars from the '70s with crazy panel paint jobs and stuff. I dig that stuff, but I also really love something simple that's classic and timeless, like what you guys create. I'm curious.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. I'm a huge fan. Did you ever expect the note to gain the notoriety that you have? Is that something that you set out to do when you started doing this? Like, or did you ever say, I want to win, Street Machine of the Year, or, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, and I never did. And to this day, when I sit down with employees, I'm no different than anybody that works here. I get to talk to guys like yourself, podcasts or some interviews here and there, but I really don't consider myself any different, any more or less important than anybody else here. And that's just the way I've always done that. If you build a good product, if you build a good car, we should always have work, and you take care of the customers, and you will have more and more work. And that's been our secret is, everybody's handpicked here. A lot of people have been with me a long time. We're still hiring people as we grow, but most everybody's been with me a long time, and we work together. I'm no different than they are. And to me, I get humbled when I go to the Mike and Jim Ring are good friends of mine now. I love their car builds, right? And for me, when they come up and like one of our car builds, it's just, to me, it's like, wow, really? You really like this? How did you even know about our car, whether we're building the car? So it's still humbling to me, but it's never been about the fame to me. I want a healthy company where we're building cool parts, cool cars. Customers are happy at the end of it, and we're taking care of our employees. That's what's most important to me, and the rest of it can come if you do that right. I think the rest of it can come. Success will come. But I never got started to go win an award, to build a certain car, or to make a bunch of money. It was just to do what we like to do. We're gearheads. We do this, and we've got luckily and been blessed with customers that let us do our thing.
Well, you might not have set out to do it, man, but you certainly have. I mean, that car behind me, how many awards that thing won?
We had a great 2018 when it won. It was a grade 8, right, for the Riddler. It won Street Machine of the Year. It won Triple Crown over at the Alloway Shades of the Past. It won SEMA Battle of the Builders. It did everything and more than we could have thought. Still gives me chill bumps talking about that car in that summer. That's a special car and a special customer. That's the fourth car we built for Stuart, that car, and very special because that car started. I'll tell you a quick story on that car. We just finished building his third car, a Camaro, and I remember pulling into my driveway at home one night in Detroit. It was about 1 o'clock in the morning. I was just beat from working 16, 18 hours that day, and Stuart calls me and said, "Hey, I'm thinking about building another car." I'm like, "All right, well, we just finished this one. Do you want it first?" I'm like, "Yeah, send that one to me." and and he said, "But I want this one to be like you want to build a Camaro." And again, it's not open checkbook. It wasn't a free for all. But he's like, "How would you like to build a Camaro?" And I remember sitting in the driveway. He was 3 hours behind me, time zone wise. So we sat and talked for another 2 hours probably. I'm like, "Stuart, this is what I would do. I've always wanted to build a Camaro like that one on the poster behind you." And he let us do it. I mean, it was just basically, I want it to be a cool 69 that can't be duplicated again or not easily duplicated again. And that's what we did.
That's fantastic, man. I want to get into the nitty gritty of that car right there. But before we do, I want to ask you a question that I haven't heard asked very much, or if ever. And I figure if I'm going to ask anybody, I'll ask you because of all the awards that you just mentioned, the car winning. What role do you think politics plays in gaining notoriety in the custom car world? Or is politics a bad word for it? Is it just networking?
I think it's like anything. There's probably some politics. Yeah, nobody likes to say that, but there's some politics involved in anything you do. But more than anything, I think it's more networking than politicking. I've always been the philosophy: you treat people right. Whether it's a customer or a vendor or who you have to do business with day in and day out, especially employees. Word gets around, and for the most part, I think it always comes out the way it should. Karma can has its days for sure, but again, politicking is a small part of it. I would definitely call it networking. And this seems like a big industry, but it's pretty small. All of us car builders know each other. We know each other's styles. We talk to each other a lot, do business with each other a lot. And if anything, that's what's neat about like the Battle of the Builders. When it comes down to it, the top 12 car builders are reviewing each other's car trucks, to the build stature that you would want to build your own car. So you're not going to bluff somebody like the Ring Brothers or Alloway or Foose or Goolsby's or Brizio, anybody like that. You're not going to bluff them. They know what you're saying if you can back it up or not from the car in front of you. And for that award alone, I can tell you that the right car wins because maybe it's a small part about your relationships and how you get along with people and how you can talk about the car in just a few minutes. But those guys know they know what they're looking at, and the right car is going to win.
Well, I tell you what, man, I do not envy the judging committee for that because it would be an impossible choice for me. When you look at the cars in that arena, it's just, I mean, geez, at that level, how do you pick one?
Right.
But luckily for you, that I think you made their choice easy, at least in 2018. But yeah, that does roll into my next question, and I guess it's what does it take to craft a car like Tux? It's a show-stopping car. Every nut and bolt, ARP, I think, right?
Right.
I mean, the level of detail is insane. What did you do anything different on that car that you would do on any other, or that you've done on any other car to get it to that level?
The philosophy is the same. We started with a vision of what the car was inside and out and the presence of the car, right? The car has to have presence. And that was nailed down pretty early. And the only thing that's different between that car and any other car that we're building today is hours. And it was just the hours and hours and hours we touched or made every single part on the car or designed every part on the car. So it's just hours of design and hours of labor is all that's different.
It's spectacular, man. I mean, the black paint is like ink in person. It's like a mile deep. Every single detail on the car is incredible. A lot of people criticize us editors, especially, well, me, because it's Street Muscle is an all-encompassing brand, all brands. And so if I post a 69 Camaro, I get some flack sometimes, like, oh, another 69 Camaro. But you could be at a car show with 100 or 200 69 Camaros, much like Columbus in 19.
Right.
But you could park that one next to all those like they did, and it just stands out. And you would think, okay, black Camaro, chrome wheels, how can you do that? But it's all in the detail. Can you run down some of the unique stuff that you guys did to that car in particular, like the 3D printed airbox and the whole deal?
Yeah, there was. It's just thousand. That car looks like a stock '69 Camaro when you really see it, but if you start looking at it and take a few hours to look at it, there's thousands of body modifications. And you're right, it comes down to the quarter panels, to the fenders. They're reshaped slightly. The wheel, just the presence that the car has and the ride height. There was a lot to do just to get the ride height, to get that car to drive where it sits at. There's no adjustment. You can get in that car and drive it just like it sits in the poster anywhere you want. But to do that, it takes, the wheel tubs, the frame rails, the subframe, all that we had to design up front to make sure that it fit that wheel tire package, because that's the look I had in my mind. When we set it on the ground for the first time, it had to have that look. I mean, it had to be there, no questions. So to do that, again, it starts with not only suspension travel, but where the frame rails are placed, the inner fenders to the quarter panels, and then to be able to put that size tire and wheel under it, to have full turning radius. That's where it starts to get hard, and where a lot of people can cut corners is like, man, I can't do that with a 10-inch wheel up front. I'm going to do it with an 8. Well, that's fine. And from the side view, you can't tell the difference, but we all can see when you're at a car show, you can see all the way around the car, and it's that times 1,000 of what you see in that car that's hard to do, that a lot of people just not the time budget or the dollar budget to be able to get it done. Unfortunately, we had plenty of time to work on it. And you're right. I mean, the design of just the interior. We worked with Classic Instruments to come off with a one-off instrument cluster. We wanted the outside of the car to be pure '69 Camaro, like it would be today. If GM went to design a '69 Camaro, these are the body modifications and the slick factor we think you would go to today. But inside, we wanted that high-end performance, almost European AMG Mercedes feel inside. And there's parts from every manufacturer in that car, I think, from Mercedes to Porsche
Really?
to Oldsmobile, Pontiac. There's all kinds of cues from different car lines that are in that car. And the cowl panel alone, at the base of the windshield, that's a '69 Firebird cowl panel, right? Oldsmobile 442 outside rearview mirrors to Mercedes hood hinges is where we started with for the hood hinges. Porsche for the cluster, it's kind of the design ideas and cues that we got. So on and on and on, as we all have these encyclopedias of minds that think about cool car parts in our mind. And to me, that was like, these are all the cool factors of cars that I like that we can put into this car, but not make it look like there's 500 different brands in this car. It's one brand. It's Chevrolet orange on the engine, and it works on that car.
No, that's fantastic, man. I thought I knew a lot about that car, but you're still schooling me. I think it was Picasso who said, good artists borrow, but great artists steal, right? And so if you're taking all these design elements from these cars that you love and kind of adapting them to make this beautiful one-off car, it's impressive, man. Tell us about that orange power plant under the hood. What went on with it?
Yeah, so it's a Harrop supercharger, Eaton-based Harrop supercharger on an LS2. The unique thing about that engine, and that car took a while to build, was that wheel-to-wheel was really the development kind of skunk works for GM with a lot of the LS engines in the early 90s, when the LS was, before it came out. A lot of things going on at wheel to wheel, and that was Kurt Urban. Kurt Urban was there at wheel to wheel, and that was one of the last engines that Kurt built at wheel to wheel, which is kind of like a GM satellite R&D center. So that's where it started. And we sent the engine, the block, and the transmission. It's a Bowler 6-speed manual. We sent the engine block, the heads, and the transmission all out to advanced plating in Tennessee, and they polished, basically sanded, deburred, polished to the point where you could just clear it, and it was a masterpiece. And then the guys took it and we sanded on it some more, smoothed some more, reshaped the heads with the head gaskets. All the gaskets were trimmed so you wouldn't see anything, down to the water pump, the crank pulleys. I mean, everything was touched on that car, down to the oil filter. That's where I wish I could have everybody that was a gearhead show them around this car, because we even hand lettered an AC Delco oil filter so it looked like what it would be on a '69 Camaro back in the day. So
That's awesome.
we even did a few spares so the car could live on with AC Delco period correct oil filters. But again, they were sanded. The oil filters, for example, was sanded. It was base coated. It was hand lettered, or we made decals for it, and then it was cleared over, and then it was cleared and sanded and polished as an oil filter. So same thing on a crank pulley. How many times do you know of someone cutting, buffing, and polishing a crank pulley to bolt on an engine, right? But that's what's in that car. So it's that level of detail. If ARP didn't have a fastener on the shelf that we needed, they made one for us. So every fastener, every bolt head looks like a nut. The nut looks like the bolt head. Everything was 12-point stainless. We chucked up every bolt in our machine shop and either turned the head of it or ball milled the end of it to give it just a unique and consistent finish. So it's on and on and on, just hours and hours of labor.
Good Lord, man. That boggles my mind. But I can't say I'm surprised. It's the level of craftsmanship that we've come to expect from Detroit Speed. I'm curious though, what was it like working with other manufacturers on that build, like the wheels and tires? When you sought them out and said, "Hey, I want these custom wheels made," what was that process like?
Yeah, it was good. Good people over at Forgeline. Those are Forgeline one-off wheels. We worked with a designer there and Scott, one of the owners, to come up with that wheel. And I wanted a specific look. I didn't want it too busy. I didn't want it too flashy. I wanted a timeless wheel, but I wanted it unique. And it's a directional wheel, so there's the wheels on one side look the same, of course, and the other side they're not. So I mean, it's something that just the machining and the flutes, how they're machined, the direction, just a little bit of angular direction to it. That's what we were after, and they nailed it. Very, very happy with what Forgeline did. We took the wheel centers and the outer wheel hoops and machined enough clearance in it so we could send those to advanced plating, have those polished and chrome plated. And then we painted the inner hoops and then put everything together in the shop right before we mounted up the set of Michelin tires that, of course, we sanded down and DA'd and polished the sidewalls so there's no letters, there's no numbers, there's no raised text at all on the sidewalls of the tires. But you do that on that type of car, right?
Definitely. So so how long was the build process from conception to finish?
Yeah, I found that car. Stuart didn't have a car, so I found a car in Louisville. A friend of mine that deals in muscle cars had the car, and I went over and picked it up. Green on green, 307 automatic, nothing basic, just super basic 69. That was in 2005, and we started on the car. We didn't work on it consistently through 2018. We were on and off of it with some other builds and different shop schedules, but I mean, if you break it down into hours, there's 9 man years in that car. So 18,000 hours in that car. Doesn't mean I build them all. That car was, at the end of a build like that, the car is one thing. It takes on its own kind of character. But to me, Detroit Speed and the end customer have to be good with each other. It has to be a win-win. If not, to me, it spoils it. The car is not everything. The relationship is what it's about. And Stuart was a great friend to this day and wanted it to be good for Detroit Speed. And the car did its thing, but it was a win-win in the end for all of us. But yeah, it's a long process, and you have to have a good relationship with a customer over that length of period to do our thing.
So the entire build process took 9 years, or it took 9 years in man hours to build it?
Yeah, exactly. So 9 man years and hours. We were on and off of it over 13 years almost.
Okay.
But if you were to have one guy on it for 9 years, 40 hours a week, that's what it took to build the car. So, of course, we had a team of people on it at different times. In the body shop, there's 2 or 3 guys on it. In the fab shop, there was 1 or 2 guys on it. Assembly, 1 or 2 guys at a time. But over the course of 13 years, there was 18,000 hours in it.
Wow. Well, I mean, again, I can't say I'm surprised. When you look at the car, and if you were to tell me, that's how long it took, I believe you, because it's to that level. I guess now I have the $1 million question, Kyle. How do you follow that one up, man? Do you think it's possible, or is that not really a goal?
It's not really a goal. I think, again, what people are looking for is different all the time. And that's what's interesting about hot rodding and building custom cars. There's no right answer. It's what people are looking for, what the interests are today, next year, 5 years from now. And that's what we do at Detroit Speed, is try and understand, hey, and if it takes 3 years to build this car, where will the industry be? What do people want to see in 3 years? same for our parts business. We have to be good listeners and understand, what people want to have for cars or what parts they need for their cars in 3 to 5 years, and we come out with parts for that. So that's always the tough part of our business, but you have to be a good listener and be open-minded. And to answer your question, I don't know if there's a way to top that. We've got some cool builds in the shop that's going on right now that I'm super excited about to bring out. But at the same time, each one is its own character, and depending on the time and if it's a hit time-wise and what people want, then we did our job right.
Well, you mentioned something earlier that kind of caught me off guard and surprised me. You said a project that you guys were just wrapping up, or just wrapped up rather, was what was it, a big block Chevelle, and he's asking you about timing and talking about a distributor. I said, whoa, that's a little bit old school for you guys. Is that something that you guys are seeing? Is that a trend that you think will start to come back? Where do you see it going, like you mentioned?
Yeah, I think it was a little bit of an anomaly. It was a carbureted big block 572, and he was all into the timing and the carb jets and where we were setting for altitude here versus where he lives. So it was neat. We had to dust off the timing gun again to find it, be able to set timing. But I don't know that that's the norm. I think people, again, this all cycles in and out, and I think the trend right now is to make kind of make the cars look original. But of course, have everything that we're used to and that we want in a modern day driver underneath and inside. But it can look the part of an old muscle car, and that's hot right now. I like that trend, but it's going to change again, and that's what's fun and challenging about this industry is where will it be 3 to 5 years from now, because that's what we're working on now that we need to put out.
What's a trend that you've seen come and go and that you were glad to see go, or a trend that you want to see go?
I remember as a kid, again, my dad was a hot rodder, and our family vacations were going to like the Street Rod Nationals or the big good guy car shows. And I remember in the 80s, right, the reverse scallops and the tweed interiors. I'm kind of glad that all moved on. But today, I like the car behind you in tux. To build a timeless car like that, you pick materials and finishes that just will always, I think, 100 years from now, when that car outlives all of us, and that car either gets restored or somebody has it in a collection, I want people to think, man, those guys knew what they were doing when they built this car. It's still attractive and interesting to this day, 100 years later.
Do you think that that's limiting? Do you think that if you went into that every build with that mindset that I want it to be timeless and classic forever, right? Do you think that's limited? Do you think that would prevent someone from maybe taking chances?
Yes, it does in certain ways, and that's why a lot of times you'll see a car, and even we've built some cars, and it was hot at the time, but would you build it again right now? Maybe not.
Right.
But again, at the time, it was right. And then I'll give you an example. A good friend of mine, Angelo Vespi, we won Battle of the Builders with his flat white '69 Camaro the very first year at SEMA, and it was an awesome build. But one, would our body shop guys ever do a flat paint job again? Maybe not. It was very hard to do. And at the time, it was hot. That's what was trending right then. So I don't know that we'd do that again right now, but you never know. It's there's no right or wrong answer in car building. Everybody has their own interest. You win on some and you lose on some. But to me, it's hard to build a timeless car that just goes on and on and on. That's the hard part.
Well, I mean, I think that you've really reached the pinnacle of that. People know who you are. They know the Detroit Speed name. And they know the quality that comes with it. I'm curious how your business has changed and morphed since earning that notoriety and respect in this industry. What are your days like now compared to when you first started out in your garage?
We give a lot more tours of the shop now, which is, to me, is fun, to have people, hey, we're going to so-and-so for vacation. We're going to stop by and get a tour. Is that okay? And I'm like, absolutely. We give a lot of tours at the shop now, sell more t-shirts probably. But to me, it's fun to see kids and families come into the shop and just love cars. I'm a big advocate and do whatever I can do for SEMA to support, young people coming into the industry, to carry this on for all of us. That's what's fun for me to now be definitely not a big name, but somebody that, they know who Detroit Speed is in the aftermarket, and for us to be able to help with local car shows or to send, some care packets out to kids and things and give tours. To me, that's really cool now that we didn't used to be able to do that.
Right. Well, I mean, it's at that level. I think giving back is important, especially to an industry that has given us all so much. I want to wrap up by discussing some of Detroit Speed's current and future builds, projects, parts, and of course, give you some time to discuss anything you want to plug or talk about.
Yeah, we've got, an array of different projects in the build shop right now, from a 66 Toyota FJ 4-door that is super cool. It's sitting on a Lexus 460 running gear and chassis, so we're excited about that for a well-known NASCAR driver. So that's coming about pretty quickly. And we've also got a 65 Buick Riviera that's through paint. That's our big car to the detail level of Tux, but in a 65 Riviera. Packing a lot of performance, ABS brakes, traction control. The guy is a professional road racer, so he loves the performance side. But to me, what a cool car, an elegant car in a 65 Riviera. So that's all going to be into one package. I'm excited about that. We've got a cool barn find 70 Chevelle that we're going to redo and restore and not overdo for a customer. We've got a Dodge Charger that will have a modern twist on a Daytona Superbird that's coming out. Doing a lot of carbon work on that and a lot of printed parts, a lot of machine parts on that. So that'll be cool. A lot of trucks in the shop right now too, and that's one thing we're working on is the early C10s, GM, the square body GMs, a lot of interest in those. We've got a neat product line getting launched right now for those. So we're building a few of those trucks. And Fox Body Mustangs, we're coming out with parts for the Fox Body Mustangs too.
Very cool. That's awesome, man. It sounds like like you said, listening to what your customers want and need, because those markets are very hot right now. That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Where can people find out more about everything that Detroit Speed has going on?
Yeah, we're putting more and more onto our website all the time. So DetroitSpeed.com. You can follow along. We do weekly updates every Friday at noon. We'll post new pictures of all the project progress for each of the car builds we've got going on. All of our products, we do a lot of install videos, a lot of tech videos. All that's on our website. So we keep putting that more and more as an educational tool and marketing tool and sales tool as well on our website. So DetroitSpeed.com, and of course anywhere on Instagram and Facebook daily. We've got neat things going up on Facebook and social media and YouTube and Twitter as well.
Fantastic, man. I know that things are a little bit crazy right now in our country as far as what we can and can't do, and for us it's difficult because we can't go to shows and things like that right now. But do you have any plans down the road? I know SEMA is approaching quickly, and for all intents and purposes, it's still going on. Can we count on seeing you there?
Yeah, we got our booth picked out, and if SEMA has it, we'll be there for sure. We're checking up everybody just to keep our employees safe, trying to do what's courteous and common sense for everybody, whether it's customers or employees alike, and trying to do the right thing. And it seems like that's just half the battle in 2020 this year. But I think if anything, the cars are a common denominator and a likable topic for a lot of people in the world. I don't care who you are, where you come from. Cars to a lot of people are the unilateral common denominator that we can all car talk and get along. And hopefully we all get back to doing that soon and treat each other right and just have some fun talking cars.
100%, man. It's been so much fun. Before we hop off, I want to give Greg an opportunity to ask any questions if he has any. Greg, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. I actually I do have one written down, just from listening to you talk. You're an engineer, and of course, I'm a tech guy. So when I hear engineer, I think numbers, facts, right angles. You know what I mean? But
Right.
Obviously, you're also an artist. Does the engineering side, do you consciously have to kind of get out of the engineer mode, or does it just let you build whatever your artistic side built up or dreams up?
Yeah, that's a good question, Greg. And to be honest with you, I'm a mess. I'm OCD. Try to be a perfectionist. Mostly engineer, a racer, so it's got to be functional and artistic. It has to come into it. It has to have the right look. So there's a lot of conversations in my head going on all the time. But again, I think everybody does that with a car build, right? I mean, whether it's your first car or your 10th car you're building, that's what's so fun about it. You get to bring all that into the theme of the car, like, hey, this is what I think is cool right now, and check this out. But to answer your question, I don't know that we ever back off on the engineering side too much. We're an engineering based company. Our core products are the chassis and suspension and performance. And you walk through our shops, and a lot of people come visit, like I said, and we give tours, and people comment on how clean the shops are, or how organized or even clean the body shop is. And that's just the way we do things. And to me, it's more efficient. We're building for people that know the difference when they come into a garage versus a shop versus a clean shop. And to me, it's, if you let your guard down, pretty soon that will reflect in the car you're building or the product you're building. And to me, it's just, I'm not a perfectionist to say that everybody has to be perfect. That's hard to ever achieve, but we can darn sure try, and we can always try and do better than we did the day before. And that's what we're after here.
Awesome.
Fantastic. Kyle, thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule to do the show, man. I know, honestly, I could keep picking your brain for probably another hour and not even scratch the surface because, like I said, I'm a huge fan, and I'm really grateful that you made some time to come and do the show. Everybody who's at home watching, if you have any questions for Kyle, drop them in the comment section below. Of course, check out Detroit Speed's website, Instagram, Facebook, and all their social media. Kyle, thank you so much, man.
Oh, you're welcome, guys. Great talking to you, and we can do it anytime. So stay well, and see you soon, hopefully.
All right, brother. We'll talk to you soon.
Take care, guys.
Great.
Yes.
What a fantastic interview, man. What a great episode. I feel like that was fantastic for our 20th episode, dude. I'm so stoked. I can't thank Kyle enough for helping us out. Coming on
Absolutely. And it was great to get some insight. Like when I heard, it was funny because when, he started the interview and he started talking about he learned, how to be resourceful on a farm and in racing. Well, in my head, that all means function over form. Like nobody cares what it looks like as long as it works.
Right.
So my first thing is like, well, how did you get in? And then of course, he answered the question, but I mean, that seems like just a hard transition to make of going from something that is very functional and then incorporating what is obviously the pinnacle of artistic, beauty.
Right.
Because, left brain, right brain. And of course, that's why I asked him. Because my artistic side just doesn't work. Like it's like I'm all logic and tech and all that stuff, and you get into artistic, and I'm like,
yeah, it can be tough, man. It can be really tough. I struggle with that myself because I'm more left side, left brain, or wait, is it right brain? Right brain, creative side, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to remember the joke about left brain people are always right or something. I don't know. Or maybe that's right-handed people or out of their mind. I don't know.
My creative side often fights my my more analytical side. But anyways, yeah, it was really cool to get some insight from Kyle because he's so knowledgeable, and like he mentioned, man, you can really tell these builders cars apart, whether it's a Roadster shop or a Ring Brothers build or a Detroit Speed build, who built the car, just, little cues. And, and so it was really cool. And I'm glad that he touched on some advice for young people who are looking to set themselves apart in an industry that's somewhat crowded.
Yeah. And I mean, and that's nice to see because I think a lot of people might get a little bit short-sighted and worry about protecting what's theirs and what they've built and not really thinking about, well, what happens in 20 years when I'm retired and everybody else is retired. We've all hit our secrets and now there's nobody else coming for, replacing us.
Exactly. And I thought it was really interesting when he started touching on all those design elements used in Tux that were borrowed from different manufacturers, because we all do it, right? Like, I'm not necessarily an import guy. I don't, I'm not going to go buy a Porsche anytime soon, but there are design elements from that brand that I really love, whether it's the stitching on a Recaro seat or, the Alcantara on a steering wheel or just a gauge design. We all do it. We all make mental notes of those things. And then he implemented them, which is really cool.
Well, I mean, it's not uncommon in OEMs. I remember with the Mark II GT40 or Ford GT, I guess it was back then. But it was Chris Vopat, our publisher at the time, sat in it at one of the auto shows, and I got a text message, and it was like, "Hey, are these Focus window switches?" Because he had a Focus, I had a Focus at the time, and I was like, "Well, yeah, of course they are. What you like?" I thought he was sending me a picture of his car, and I'm like, "Of course they are. You know they are." And then the next picture was of the GT. And the only thing we could figure is that they figured that no one who would buy a Ford GT would have ever had a Focus to be able to know that one came from the other. Again, I can't tell you that the part numbers are the same. I can tell you that picture. And from what Chris said, because Chris got to play with them, I'm pretty sure they were Focus, window switches.
Vastly different tax brackets, but similar parts used on the car. That's funny. Well, I don't know, man. The Chevy fan in me wants to say, well, Greg.
Well, I mean,
they're all guilty. They're all guilty.
Yeah, I mean, everybody takes design cues. I mean, it has to work. And I mean, and remember, OEMs, they're trying to save money, on something that they're going to sell maybe 200 units of. Does it really make sense to put the R&D of OEM level switch building?
Exactly. Yeah.
When you're like, well, I can just go grab this one. And it's like, well, we don't want people to know. So let's grab because they didn't have the Fiesta back then. They didn't have anything cheaper. So it's like, well, let's get them as far apart as we can possibly.
But yeah, I thought that was interesting. An interesting point that he made. And it was cool to talk to somebody who has been on both sides of being a builder and a parts manufacturer, and now he's working closely with SEMA. So he's on all sides, and that's really cool.
I mean, think about it. If you want someone building your car, wouldn't you want someone that spent some time in an OEM NVH lab?
Yeah. When you talking about NVH, I was like, oh, okay, all right. We're talking about this level of engineering, and okay, all right, Kyle.
Yeah, it's like all of a sudden you start to see, these are where these little attention to detail things come from because he did it professionally. I mean, he still does it professionally, but you know what I mean.
I made a point to ask him early on. I was like, dude, where did you learn this attention to detail? Because there's always a story with someone like that. Like when he started talking about, growing up on farm and racing and stuff, I had the same, line of thought that you did. Like, really? That's where you got your attention to detail? But then he started getting into the engineering and his education, and it started to make sense. Came full circle. But anyways, man, great interview, a great episode 20. What do you have going on Engine Labs, bro? What's coming out this week?
This week we are going to see. Actually, your viewers are going to be interested in this. The twin torque storm deal that Holly did with Prestige Motorsports. We have dyno results now.
Oh, hell yeah, that's awesome.
I'm not going to ruin the article. I'm just going to say 4 digits.
All right.
That's all I'm going to say. It's 4 digits.
When's the article supposed to drop?
That should be out Wednesday.
Okay, so everybody, by the time this airs, it'll be up on Engine Labs. Check it out. That's definitely going to be a very, very cool one. Talking about twin blowers, not twin turbos, twin blowers. Very similar to the head unit that's on my Monte Carlo.
I believe it's actually the same head unit, just 2 of them.
Yes, so I think they use the same ones, just obviously different bracketry to attach them to different power plants. Definitely check that out. In the meantime, you can go over to streetmusclemag.com too and check out what we have going on over there. Part 3 of my Project Heavy Metal mini series, the van build, is going to be up today, so it'll be up by the time this airs. This time we show you how we got rid of some really lame old 90s graphics on the outside of the van. Replaced it with some really cool pinstripe hot rod flames. Also, what do we have this week? We have a very cool interview with the founder and proprietor of Reviva Engine Corporation, which I believe you published something recently on them. Or no, Brian Havens of LSX Mag.
Yeah, that was a really cool deal because it was their 408 crate LSX. Or I'm sorry, LS3?
Right.
Because it's not an LSX. It doesn't use an LSX block. But
it was started out just by remanufacturing, old GM crate engines or GM like workhorse engines. But now the owner, it's been a family business for a long time. The owner is a young guy, and he's kind of branching off from that, that part of the business and doing some cool hot rod stuff. So check it out if you guys are into that. And obviously check us out on Facebook, Instagram, streetmusclemag.com, enginelabs.com, powerautomedia.com. Greg, you got anything else, brother?
Happy 4th of July.
Yeah, happy 4th, everyone. Yeah, definitely. Light some fireworks, drink some beers, and hang out with your family if you can.
Hopefully in the proper order.
Yeah.
We want to have a finger check when we get back.
Yeah, definitely. Stay safe and go drive it, man. Peace.